All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So DaaSle, we're a Quantum Alliance partner. We're based in Los Angeles. We have a SOC and data center there. And we've been doing systems integration, value-added reselling, disaster recovery as a service, security, hybrid cloud, managed security services, and collaboration with Cisco. And we've been doing this for about 8 years now. We're a small group of about 14 really talented technical sharks, if you will, ninjas. We've gotten ourselves into situations where people have exhausted all resources and have come to our team to come get them out of sticky situations. So we're known as the go-to place for solving the most difficult problems that customers have. So we're quite proud of that, and we're quite proud of working with Quantum, and look forward to our presentation today. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Casey, and she'll run through the Quantum.
Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where everyone's located today. I'm Casey Najarian. I'm the regional sales manager for Quantum. I cover Southern California, basically most of LA down to San Diego. My contact information is on this slide, so if anyone needs to reach me, there you have my contact information. So I'm just going to give a brief overview of Quantum Corporation and what we do. Quantum Corporation was founded in 1980. So we've been in business for 40 years. 20 years of that, we've been the leading supplier in supporting of managed video and unstructured file data. We have over 30,000 active support contracts around the world and over 44 exabytes of data preserved. We support scale-out storage, archive, and data protection solutions for capturing, sharing, and preserving digital assets in physical and virtual environments. The company provides storage file systems, nearline storage systems, backup, deduplication appliances, tape libraries, and cloud services. Big range there. Our customers range from media and entertainment to federal, state, local government, banking, medical, genome sequencing, video surveillance, autonomous test vehicles, and that's just a few of them. By 2025, it's estimated that 80% of data will be unstructured and comprised of video and digital images. Just to give an example, a typical autonomous test fleet will generate more data in one day than all of Twitter in a year. It's a lot. Quantum supports the broadest range of connectivity options, the broadest range of storage options, and the highest streaming performance. We independently scale performance, user access, and capacity, and we have Emmy Award-winning data management and protection. Video and unstructured data is growing exponentially. It lives everywhere. It must be kept indefinitely and contains immense value. Quantum technology and services help customers capture, create, and share digital content. We preserve and protect it for decades at the lowest cost. Quantum's platforms provide the fastest performance for high-resolution video and images, with solutions built for every stage of the data lifecycle, from high-performance ingest to real-time collaboration and analysis and low-cost archiving. Every day, the world's leading entertainment companies, sports franchises, research scientists, government agencies, enterprises, and cloud providers are using Quantum today. And that is very brief, but that is, in a nutshell, what Quantum does. So I will toss this over to Diane.
And thank you so much, Casey. We appreciate that. Thanks, everybody. So what Quantum is bringing here, and if you don't mind going to the next slide, we're going to talk about ransomware protection. We are definitely going to talk about our the solution that we have developed and have been promoting and helping a lot of customers with that. But I want to start off by leveling set, not necessarily on what ransomware is, because I think everybody is aware what ransomware is and the damage it's done. But I want to kind of get everyone on the same page on the effect, the tremendous effect it's having on the enterprise, whether it's an SMB all the way to Fortune 500. And it's quite frankly becoming one of the biggest threats in the enterprise, even more than hardware failure or even a natural disaster. And it's really hard to believe that these payments have gone from, there's maybe 3, 4, 5 years ago, they were in the hundreds of thousands, even some last year. But with some of the strains and the level of harm that they've done to these enterprises, they've gone from the tens of millions last year to the most recent one last week. They asked for $23 million, and that's just the ransomware payment demand. That's not including all the costs associated with having to they can use one vector, one entry point, and they can infect multiple companies across the nation or the world by attacking MSP. So it's really an alarming threat. If we can move forward a couple slides. Um, and just real quick here, industries that are targeted, it runs the gamut in terms of which ones are hit the hardest or the most or most often. It really depends report you take a look at on these, cyber reports that come out on a yearly basis. But usually at the top of the charts is government, education, manufacturing. But in this particular case, we see healthcare and education down at the bottom. But from what I've seen, the most recent reports, they're right back up at the top. So it really, changes depending on depending on what strain is being used and what vector points are being forced into. And so, the bottom line is that criminals will always choose the path of least resistance. They target the understaffed and the overburdened entities, many of which have unfortunately have resigned to simply being attacked by these criminals because they have no means to protect themselves, or they don't have the budget, or they don't have the ability or the skill set, or what have you. The reasons are many, but what I want to point out here is that the industry lists vary by source. It targets from SMB to the large enterprise in the Fortune 500. One alarming trend is that criminals are using something called RAS, which is ransomware as a service. And what they're doing is these guys are basically leveraging the most common and the most successful strains available. They have a help desk in the dark web where they enable them to pursue not only hitting the smaller organizations where they know that the bounty is not that high, but they're just practicing. They're not staying there. They're being encouraged to become those big game hunters. If we can go to the next slide. Bottom line is every organization is at risk. I quickly want to show you here frequency of successful cyber attacks. We're not just talking about a one-time hit. We're talking about multiple times. As you can see here in the chart at the pie chart here at the left on your screen, 45% of companies are reporting that they're being hit 1 to 5 times. Look at the graph here on the right-hand side. This is the percentage compromised by at least one successful attack. The numbers speak for themselves. We thought we had hit a plateau for some time, but it's still increasing. We're at 80.7% in 2020. This is, of course, a report based on the last 12 months. If you look at other reports, it might say something a little bit different, but somewhere in line with what we're talking about here. The average attack is 6 to 10 times, and they surveyed about 7 industries across the world. Tidbit of information here is that 35.2 of organizations, that's more than a third, have joined the frequent victim club with 6+ cyber attacks in 1 year. You don't want to be in that club. If you can move forward, please. And then, of course, the cost. We're in the billions now. It's costing billions of dollars to a bill that we're being hit with because organizations that are paying ransom are funding this indirectly, albeit, but they're still funding this criminal activity. And so, at some point, we need to take a step back and consider, if that is the best way to go about resolving your ransomware incident. To add to the complexity, which I don't have here in this slide, but maybe you've heard that the U.S. Department of Treasury has issued an advisory that is focusing on the sanction risks associated with ransomware payments related to malicious cyber activity. So basically, what that means is that if the terrorist organization that is attacking you is from any sanctioned country like Iran or Russia or North Korea, and you negotiate with them and you make that payment, you will be liable according to this U.S. Department of Treasury notice. And so that just adds to the complexity. I mean, um, talk about adding more problems to the victim here. And so I don't know how far that's going to go, but that's out there, something we need to consider. Um, One of the things that these ransomware criminals are doing is they're data exfiltration is very common. These RAS variants that want big returns, and then of course the hidden future cost after an event. The chart on the right hand side just basically indicates that the payments are just getting higher. I mean, this one is only going up to about 198,000, which was the average last year. This year, we don't know exactly what it is, but it's definitely on the higher end. And so, if you can go to the next slide, please. What is at stake here is um, when we are not proactive, is the loss of revenue, clients, and trust. That is something that is going to happen when there's a successful ransomware attack. There's damage in reputation and shaming, the large sums that you have to pay. The threat will always be there, and that's just for in general. And then, of course, one thing that we need to consider, and maybe it's a change of mind. It's a behavior that needs to change, is that we need to start preparing our organizations to be proactive in their security policies, and that includes data protection, because that is the only way we're going to be able to reverse this trend and stop funding this criminal activity. And so what Quantum has done is we've created a solution that enables you or helps you to be proactive. And we're going to take a look at that here in the next couple of slides. If we can, yep, next one. And so what is it that we bring to the table? We're going to help you improve your ransomware protection and security. If we look at this from, data is the gold mine of every organization. If we look at this from the standpoint of our, financial resources, what do we do when we need to mitigate risk? We have to diversify. And so what we're saying here is in order to be fully protected from a successful ransomware attack, is your ransomware protection needs to come in layers, basically. You can't diversify your network because everything is on the same network, but you certainly can diversify where your data is. And that's very important because what we've done is we are offering a low TCO so that you can put that data on an offline copy or in an offline tape device. And we'll go a little bit more into detail of what that involves. But what I want to point out is we know that tape has been on the downtrend for a long time, but ransomware has pretty much given it a new life, and that is because of the inherent nature of a tape library to secure that data, because there's an air gap. And unless a virus or ransomware becomes airborne, there's no way that it's going to attach itself to a copy or an offline copy. On top of that, we've got the security with encryption, AS256-bit. We've got Worm. And then we've also added another layer of security called multi-factor authentication. If we can move forward, please. And I'll show you a little bit, just going down memory lane. I'm not going to spend too much time here, but we all know how a tape was used traditionally. Backups were sent daily to disk, and then tapes were sent off-site to the likes of Iron Mountain for long-term retention. We know that that was a real pain. The whole thing about handling tapes because the capacity was, we're talking about 2 or 3 terabytes, something before LTO, 6 or 7. And so that was very painful. That was just something that people were not really interested in doing anymore. And especially with the newer disk technologies that were coming out, it was just easier, it was faster. But lo and behold, ransomware starts hitting a lot of organizations. They attack all those online copies. And now we have a renewed use for tape. If you don't mind going forward, please. So what we're saying is there's a new use case for tape, and it's not so much about that offsite copy. It's about having an offline copy for ransomware protection. Now, the customer will still do the same daily backups to disk, and then do regular backups to tape for that offline copy. The cloud or a DR device can be used for that offsite copy, or another tape device can be used at a DR location. So it really depends on how policies you want and how diverse you want your data. Definitely think about the layers and the tiering and how the savings that it can bring you once you put the value on that data. After a certain point, after say 30 days, does it really need to stay online on my network connected devices? The most probable answer is no. Okay, from that point, can I send it to tape? Do I send it to cloud? Do I send it to my DR site? Do I send it to all locations? So we've removed the complexity, not only because the tape capacity on those cartridges has increased tremendously. LTO9 you'll be able to store up to 18 terabytes uncompressed and 45 terabytes compressed on the same footprint, it's still the same size cartridge. You'll be able to store a lot more data on that. In addition, with the argument of putting an on-prem tape, you will be able to have that offline copy to protect against ransomware. So what happens is, if those online copies are compromised, and maybe even the cloud copy may be compromised, we've heard of that before, and it's not so. It happens more often these days. Then you have that offline copy available on site, so you don't have to pay egress charges if you have to call back the data from the cloud. So what does that mean? The investment on a tape is, it's very low, it's very cost effective. But when you decide not to keep that data on site in a tape library, and you decide to call it back from the cloud, then your savings are washed out from investing in a tape library, because those egress charges are tremendous. Another thing we've done is we have taken the complexity out of handling tapes, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So that's a really cool story that we have. You can go forward, please. And so this is just a quick image of what we're talking about as far as air gap and offline. There is no connection to the network. If we can move forward. And so what Quantum has put together is an active vault, and the benefits are that there is a true air gap ransomware protection. There is no disruption. Software only upgrade. So if you already have a scalar tape library, then you can add the upgrade of adding the active vault license and the advanced reporting license in order to become a fully ransomware protected solution. And so this has removed the ability to, or the need to have to handle tapes, because it has the active vault. What it does is it takes a partition in the library that is completely disconnected from network, completely disconnected from the host, so that your backup application, when it writes, it's going to write to the backup partition, to the active partition that is connected to the network. And then once, based on your policies, once that process is done, then it transfers that data. The robot will take control within the library and will move that data over to the partition that is completely disconnected from the network. So there's no drives and there's no host connection. The only person that can see what's going on in the active vault partition is the administrator. And so he'll use the GUI to set the policies and move the data around as needed. So it's a solid, secure air gap for ransomware protection. Very easy to configure, but basically it guarantees that there will be no drives in that partition, no host or network, so that the attacker, should you get attacked, will have no access to that active vault partition. We've actually had this active vault feature available for quite a few years, but now with ransomware, it just made it, a whole lot attractive to many organizations. And then, of course, it just builds on the reliability and the low cost of tape, and it's a very strong alternative to other approaches that quickly become very expensive when you start scaling. So this makes a lot of economical sense. Rather than having to do it like we used to do it before, traditionally, where you had to, take those tapes and put them in a shelf somewhere or take them to Iron Mountain. If we can move forward, please. And so basically, this is what it does. The Quantum in-library vault for ransomware protection. Nothing is different from this particular, these couple of steps. The backup application will write the data and then it'll export after the job is complete. So there's nothing unusual. There's no real difference of what everyone else does at this point. If you can, oops, if you can go back. Oh, that's fine. Okay, it did it all. There we go. It's that step number 2 on the right-hand side where it configures the partitions that sets the export redirect policy. And so what that does is once the active vault license is installed, the administrator would configure the partition in the library, and then you would have at least one backup application partition, and also you configure the AV partition. Once it's set up and all the policies are configured, the library will do the moving and exporting, and the robot redirects the move to the AV partition. Once that is, it's all done automatically. The administrator doesn't have to do. What we've seen is that once a customer writes it to the backup application, they want to air gap it as soon as possible. Be done with writing it and put it off into the protected in the active vault partition. The data can remain in the AV partition indefinitely. You can have as many copies as you want, and policies as to when you want to expire them, and reuse those cartridges. So all of that is based on policies. It is pretty simple, as you can see here. It's all automated, and no network connectivity, and then the tapes can only be retrieved from the vault using an administrator direct in the GUI. If we can move forward. And there it is, step number 5, just the admin moves tapes back into the application partition as needed so you can reuse those cartridges. In addition to the active vault, we have the Worm Media and Scalar Key Manager to manage keys and additional security. Forward. And then just a little sample of what customers and how customers are using Active Vault. They can keep air gap for backup copies. They do slot sizing. It just depends on the number of copies that you want. But you can have multiple backups anytime, and over to the active vault partition. And then,
Sorry about that.
oh, okay. And then the other thing I want to mention here is that, the reason why a lot of customers like this air gap, it just adds that additional layer of protection. And then they also told us that the library admin account needed an additional security layer. And so what we created was a multi-factor authentication layer of security on all of our Scalar libraries. And so that was something that they asked for. We listened, and we added that a few months back. We can go forward. And it's very simple. You are probably, all of us here are very familiar with a multi-factor authentication process. But because the Active Vault can be accessed by the admin account, it was seen as a weak point. And so we added that additional layer. And it just basically uses a time-based one-time password to access that admin account. And so if you're used to using Gmail, Yahoo, or whatever emails, you're probably asked for the same thing, an additional layer of security, which is called multi-factor authentication. If we can go forward. And so this here is the ransomware protection pack bundles that Quantum has created, because we want to make it very simple. I said earlier that we're in the data protection business. We can't help you diversify your network, but we can certainly help you diversify your data. And that's the gold mine for every organization. We're not asking you to replace your disk or to replace your cloud service. We're saying you got to start thinking about having an offline copy available on site should you be compromised with ransomware. And all reports indicate that this trend of attacks is going to continue rising. And the survivors will be the ones that are diversifying, that are being proactive, that are really looking into their security policies. And IT security professionals are working with IT directors and network admins, and just to come up with a plan to diversify, because it requires all hands on deck. And what we've done is we've made it very, very simple, very easy. You want offline ransomware protection? Here are the options. You have a small configuration, a medium, and a large, from 600 terabytes to 2.4 petabytes in capacity. We include in these packages the configurations, recommended configurations, quote unquote, but these are flexible. You can get them in any size you want. But these packages are being offered with everything you see there. They also come with support and with media, and the prices are listed there for your convenience. If you already have a Scalar tape library, then you can go with the add-on ransomware protection bundle, which includes the Active Vault license, and it includes the advanced reporting software license. And that price is listed on there as well. So there is no need to have to purchase any other hardware if you already have a Scalar tape library. If you don't already have a Scalar tape library, then we highly recommend one of the 3 packages that are listed right above the software bundle to get you started. Makes it very easy, makes it very simple for anyone to that needs offline ransomware protection. Here are the options. Do you need a small, a medium, or large? And this enables you to protect your data offline without the need of handling tapes, without the need of having to manage tapes, because it's all done by the robot. And all you have to do is set your policies one time, once and for all. And just the next slide here. And then just, again, we are not necessarily saying, again, that you need to replace this technology with that technology. It's layered. You're going to need layers. You're going to need a NAS device, a deduplication device to be able to restore. If that particular online server was not harmed or was not compromised by ransomware, then that's the fastest way you're going to be able to recover. But if you are compromised at that level, then you need something to back that up, and that's where the offsite or offline copy and having an offline copy on site basically saves you from having to pull from the cloud or your offsite copy and pay those egress charges. And so this is the offering. This is what we're saying. It's time to be proactive, to layer up, working in conjunction with your cybersecurity software, with your NAS device, with your cloud, and with your off tape for offline ransomware security. And then, of course, let the cyber insurance be the last piece. Of course, you're going to need it, but the goal is to not indirectly fund the cyber criminal activity, because we're not only just spending on that, we are spending on the latest technology, machine learning, and all these latest technology to help us protect from ransomware. So we're all working in conjunction, and we need to be effective in that and help us reverse the trend. And I think that's all I have. Yep. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Diana. That was wonderful. I was really, you're so enthusiastic about this, and I think you're absolutely right. We've been working with Quantum over the years, and we've always talked about having a multi-backup strategy. And one of the interesting things that's happened since the COVID epidemic has struck us is that all the major vendors, the WAF vendors, and so on, have reported about a 25% increase in malicious traffic and basically a cyber war. And they're getting very sophisticated. And so
Right.
really need this protection, very timely solution. Thank you, Diana.
You're welcome.
So now I think we want to open up for some questions. If we have any questions, anyone? Let's see. I have one question for you, Diana. So we've been selling cloud backup as a partner, and what are some of the implications? I see one of the things would be that the speed of recovery and egress charges, but can you kind of lay out what the advantage and disadvantage and pros and cons of cloud versus this sort of technology?
Well, of course, cloud, the pros of using cloud, obviously, one of the main ones is having your data offsite in a different location. The other one is, you get to take advantage of scale that they do have, the costs associated with that, economies of scale, right? The downside of it is that if you're not keeping your applications within that same cloud environment, then you're going to have to pay egress charges to bring that data back. And so there is, a lot of our customers and customers I've had in the past have said, going to cloud was the best thing that they've done. Look at, the storage fees per month. But then they got hit with ransomware, and they got a $20,000 invoice for, those egress charges. And that just wiped out any savings they had. On top of that, every other spend they had to account for to recover. And so I think everybody knows what the pros are in going to cloud. It's just that for ransomware protection, depending on what you choose to use in the cloud, if you choose to do an online storage, there is that risk that if you can live with that risk of that online copy being compromised, then it really depends on what your risk level is. If not, then we highly recommend that offline copy.
Can you explain a little bit for the audience what the egress charges are?
Right. Oh, go ahead. There. Oh, I thought somebody was going to say something. So those egress charges are the fees associated with pulling data from the cloud or recalling data from the cloud back to your location. And so that involves whether it's a terabyte, whether it's gigabytes, whether it's whatever it is, if it is being called to, back to your location, if you have your applications outside of that cloud ecosystem, then that data, will collect egress charges as it is being called out of the cloud. On top of that, it's not going to take a few hours. It's going to take days, and that will depend on the amount of the data. So when you're trying to recover after a ransomware attack, you want to recover as quickly as possible. When those online copies have been compromised on site, then you want to recover as quickly as possible. Those egress charges, that you're going to be hit with that when you start recalling that data, and then on top of that, you're not going to get it within the time frame you would actually need it. Hopefully that explains it a little
Yeah,
bit.
that's great. That's a perfect answer. I mean, the time savings there, it would take a long time I think, to download all your terabytes of files and reconstruct everything. Whereas if you're on-prem, probably much quicker time to recovery.
Right, right. And then, when you talk about these ransomware attacks are getting so insidious that they're locking down a lot of the network capabilities within your location. And so having to pull that data back, it's really a mess what's happening. And we're in a crisis, I'd say. And working, like you said earlier, putting your data in different locations, especially offline for ransomware protection is one of the best alternatives there is.
So, Diane, I have another question for you. Can I work with an active vault? Can the users be a long distance away from the tape library? Does one have to be in the console? Like, remember in the old days, you had to be in the computer room to run your tape drives.
So can you work with Active Vault? Can you repeat that question? What was
Can
that
you work
again?
with Active Vault from a long distance from a tape library, like remote?
Yes, yes, you can. Yes, you can. You can access the web GUI via a remote location.
And we can automate it, right? So that we're
Yes.
going to be hands off. That's great.
The whole point of Active Vault is to be completely hands off. And we are the only tape library manufacturer that has the ability to do that. Again, it's partitioning is not anything new, but with every other library out there, you will have to handle it, and you will have to manage it a little more on a daily or weekly basis. Whereas if you use the Active Vault partition, the robot does everything. You set your policies, and the robot begins moving everything to that Active Vault partition.
So if I'm a customer and I have invested in some software already to do backup, is that going to work with this solution? Like a Veeam
Yes,
or
as yes,
okay.
a Veeam, for example, a Commvault, whatever it is, we are compatible with many backup applications, and as long as it's compatible, it should work. Um, and so what happens is the backup application can only see the partition that it's assigned to. It can't see the active vault. Once the backup application issues a command to export it based on your policies, it loses sight of it. For all its intents and purposes, it's gone. That tape cartridge is somewhere in a shelf. But then the robot takes over that command, and not necessarily over the command, but it's a next step. It takes that tape and it puts it in the active vault partition, so the backup application has no visibility into that AV partition. Remember, there's no drives and there's no host connection. The other thing about this AV partition, it's not like another security feature about it is that because there is no host or drive connection, nobody can come on site, take a laptop, remove the SAS cable, and access that AV partition. Why? Because there's no drives. The only way to access it is through the library GUI.
Excellent. Excellent. That's great, Diana. Thank you.
Welcome.
Very clear answer. Anybody else have any questions? Let's see who else is out there. Steve, Jackie, Scott, anybody? No? Greg? Bob? Okay.
Silence.
Silence. Everybody's muted. And they're just. All right. So I guess with that, we'll go ahead and let you know that the promotion is available online. We've put it on DaaSle.com site, the 3 solutions that we have. And there's the URL that you can go to the store and actually buy it online. If you have questions, of course, on configurations and integration and so on, we're happy to answer them for you. So if you want to give me a call or email me, that would be great. Okay, with that, we'll go ahead and let everybody go. I hope you enjoyed the session, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.